Okay, thank you. So I know you've all been sitting down a little bit, so I'm going to ask you all to stand up, have a little wiggle, and we're going to do a little activity. So while you're standing up, I want you to think about how many electronic devices you've got with you today. So have you got a phone, a laptop, tablet, a Fitbit or a smartwatch? So get that number in your head. And now I want you to sit down if you've got no devices. All right, you're all still standing. Sit down if you've got just one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5. Okay, 5. Now, I work in the tech industry. I've got up to 8 before when doing that exercise. It was kind of like, bro, you've got a problem. Switch off. But I think that just kind of gives you, just a bit of a sense about how prevalent e-waste is now in our society. And I think we're up to 23.6 kilos per person in this country. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what are some of the ways that businesses is thinking about that or not. All right, so firstly I need to talk about us because we're not air conditioners. So if you're hoping for me to give you some goss about Mark Taylor, I'm really sorry, but I can't do that. And we're also not photocopiers and printers because that's Fuji Xerox that you're thinking of. So what we do is we're a large ICT outsource provider, basically. So if you want someone to come and run your ICT service desk that you ring when you get a blue screen and things go wrong, if you need a data centre or a network or something like that, we will do that for you, and doing that for large companies like Caltex, Qantas, as well as government departments. So we really think a lot about sustainability as part of that job, and in particular ICT sustainability. So a lot of that's energy consumption, as you might expect, but we do take a lot of thinking about what happens to that product, because we do also make our own Fujitsu product and import it into this country. So that means we have a liability under the Product Stewardship Act as well. So we've done that. So look, the official recycling rate is still very low for e-waste. So that's what's happening kind of in this country. We've just done our exercise. Everybody thinks that's kind of a good idea, right? We're all kind of like on board with, yeah, that's something we should do, but we're not doing it. So one of the things that Fujitsu does is we do an Ict Sustainability Benchmark. So we've got about 3,500 customers in this database now. It's the largest database of its type worldwide. And we ask them about their sustainability practices, specifically in that niche of ICT. So what are you procuring? Is it good? Are you thinking about recyclability? How are you running it? Is your data centre running efficiently? Are you engaging your end users and asking them to switch off their device? Or what is it that you're doing? And of course that includes e-waste disposal at the end of life. This benchmark we've done since about 2011. We had our first report in 2012, another one in 2014, and this is something that we continue to do. And basically we're kind of looking at this and saying that life cycle dimension at the top, that includes disposal and recycling for e-waste. And you can see there that that's really had no movement since 2012 when we did the first benchmark. And in that time, we've seen the introduction of the National Recycling Scheme. So this is something that actually Fujitsu really advocated for. So we're like, we need to get something going on in this industry. So when we looked at that and said, well, this is a time in this country when the recycling industry has been maturing and has been expanding. But why isn't the maturity of doing that recycling expanding too? What could be the reason? So we've kind of done that. And these are all, I won't go through them one by one, but these are some of the reasons, and they are just as attributable at a householder level as they are at a business level. And that was a real surprise to us. There's a huge concern about data security. That's probably, especially at a business level, the number one barrier, because you've got that laptop or you've got that server that's got all your confidential data on it. You don't want to have a data security breach. So the path of least resistance is just to hold on to it. Maybe keep it in a cupboard somewhere. What do you do? There's a real misconception that e-waste, right, I carry my phone around in my pocket, it's probably not actively poisoning me as far as I know, that it's not that bad. They're a sealed unit. So how can stuff be leaching out of them in landfill? That's an interesting one. It's very interesting talking to customers about actually the landfill ban that's proposed in Victoria, and just the lack of awareness that's coming in the general business community about that impending change is quite strange. So a real interesting kind of piece there. This is kind of my hall of fame of basically when you get all of those problems, you know, I'm not sure what to do with it, it's expensive, I could use it again. This is what you kind of wind up with. And, you know, what have we got here? So we've got eWaste in a skip. We tend to find that with particularly kind of peripheral devices, which are almost consumable nowadays, right? So your monitors, other peripherals like keyboards and monitors, small printers even, handheld scanners, smart devices. And this is something that's really interesting in terms of an overall trend, because e-waste is getting, well, it's getting more prevalent, we know, because electronic devices are getting smaller and they're getting cheaper. So there's less likelihood on the part of a large business to really say, okay, well, you know, I don't really care what happens to that monitor. I'm not asset managing it. I'm not making sure that it's going through its full life cycle, because I can buy another one for 10 bucks or 20 bucks or 15 bucks, right? Back in the day when you used to have, you know, every monitor with an asset tag on it because they were valuable assets and you really wanted to make sure where they were, it was a lot easier to ensure at the end of its life cycle that it didn't wound up in a bin, because there was a formal process for kind of decommissioning that asset. So that kind of stuff in a skip doesn't necessarily happen with laptops or servers and things like that because of that data security concern. But what happens is some of the other things where you've got that stuck in your office. That photo kind of just behind me here is a loading bay. Where that's literally boxes and boxes of e-waste that had sat there for years, literally years, waiting for somebody to kind of think, I don't know what I'm doing about that, and do something about it. And I suppose, you know, I'll tell a fun story in that, you know, I'm here today to tell you about what we've learned and what we've done as a company, but we're not immune to this kind of stuff. We've just done an office move in Auckland, and we've been in this office for about 2 or 3 decades. This has been a long time, and the office includes a small field storage warehouse as well. And, you know, we've had all the e-waste education there and talked about disposal. And as part of that office move, we cleared out more than 2 tonnes of e-waste that was just in storage or, you know, under a desk or people weren't sure. And I think the biggest, you know, fact about e-waste is it doesn't smell. You know, you can just have it sit there in your cupboard or your meeting room. You know, and it doesn't create an incentive for you to do anything about it. So for Fujitsu, so we'd had a zero e-waste to landfill policy since 2009. So we're coming up to 10 years of having that as a formal policy. And of course, as I said, we were and are a liable party under the Act. But we had a really complex e-waste environment where stuff was just kind of bouncing around. Some things were managed, some things were not managed, some things we were managing on behalf of customers in our role as the ICT outsourcer for them. And they might have had a different policy than we did. When we looked at e-waste recycling, we had a lot of, obviously on things like servers and laptops, that might be sensitive data. But we didn't really talk to people about all those other things. So what do you do with the chargers? What do you do with the monitors? What do you do with the keyboards and the mice and so on? So one of the side effects we found of, you know, really kind of focusing in on the big things is that our whole policy kind of became less credible. Because if you're saying to people, right, I want that laptop over there and we're going to recycle it, it's really important for the environment, but you haven't talked about everything else with the cord, like the charger, like the keyboard, like the computer mouse, you automatically kind of seem a bit less serious about the subject, right? You can't, you know, it can't be that bad if there's stuff going off to landfill over here, or nobody's ever given me direction about that. So that was kind of one of the really interesting findings that we had, I think, when we sat down and looked at this environment. Ooh. I've gone backwards. So what did we do? So first of all, there was a big bit of education policy. Right, so it was about saying, okay, well, this is the policy and this is what you should do. But of course, if you're going to have a policy that says, great guys, no e-waste to landfill, you have to have the facility for that stuff to not go to landfill. You can't just say, oh, please don't do that, right? And you really have to make that as simple and as easy and accessible as you possibly can. And for us, that's been quite an interesting experience. So we've got e-waste coming out of a really large warehouse, which is here in the Sydney Metro. We've got e-waste coming out of about 13 office premises across Australia and New Zealand, and 6 data centres, which is big kind of servers and racks and huge bits of e-waste, as well as about 19 kind of field stores scattered around the country, mainly in the regions. So this stuff was kind of out there, you know. So we had to look at, we knew that we weren't going to set a solution where one size fit all, but we could get a solution where everybody had something that worked for them, and the end goal of diverting all that product from landfill would be achieved. So what that really meant was broadening the net and saying to people like, okay, if it's got a battery in it, if it's got a cord on it, we're going to collect that. Right, keep it out of the bin. You know, I don't care if it doesn't have an asset tag on it. I don't care if it only costs you $3 down at JB Hi-Fi. Don't put it in the bin, all right? We want to keep that out of landfill. So that had its own kind of set of problems in terms of thinking about volume and thinking about the cost of recovery. But the benefit of having such a simple message that was easy to understand, I can't emphasise that enough. And the other thing was, we really looked at who we were disposing the e-waste with, because that was different in every region as well. We did have some regional centres where I'd be like, okay, so guys, what do you do with your e-waste? And they were like, we just put it in a truck and we take it to the tip when we've got a bunch. We didn't have a record, you know, of that. They could have been doing that. So we really wanted to do some due diligence with our e-waste processing partner, really understand, really make sure that nothing was being sent abroad, and really making sure that we had the complete oversight and trust in them and what was going on. So we did that. And then what we thought was, well, we've done all this work, right? That was a lot of effort. What we should do is help our customers with their Ict Sustainability to do it too. So one of the things we'd come up with was this collection problem. And this is by no means unique, that you would just have, you know, piles of stuff laying around. And, you know, maybe in your recycling area you've got a collection point for cardboard and general waste, but it's kind of gross, it's down in the basement, you have to have a special key to go down there, nobody really wants to do that. So we're like, okay, we'll get a super smart bin, stick it in the office where everybody can see it and use it. So this was our prototype. So it's about half high, stands about half as high as I am. Our recycling partner, Sims, is actually here, and they paid or helped us pay for the prototype. So that was important too, that we really worked in partnership with them and with an IoT solution to monitor the bin when it was full. So one of the fun things about working in a tech company is you've just got like several thousand nerds doing tech things with fun devices that everyone's like, oh, we can make it do that. So we did. So it's got a little IoT sensor in there, monitors when full, and sends an alert. So what was interesting is that when we kind of took this out to customers, we had a couple of problems with it. One is that it's low to the ground. So you had to pick up the full bin and empty it into some other thing, like a bigger bin. So then you've got all sorts of kind of people looking at you doing OH&S assessments and stuff like that on lifting, you know, the heavy bins full of e-waste. So that was a bad thing. We had a lot of problems actually with the bin sensor in this model. This is quite a small bin, and the smart bin sensors are really designed for like big bins, right? 660 litre bins, skips. So they actually just weren't that good in terms of monitoring what a fill level looked like, and they fill quickly. So you can all of a sudden get from, you know, 50% full to 100% full, and people would come down and they'd be like, oh, great, I've been looking for somewhere to recycle my e-waste and I've brought in my PlayStation and my printer from home, and I can't fit it in the slot, so I'm just going to leave it on top there or stack it on there next to the floor. And that was exactly what happened. So we kind of looked at that and thought, you know, what we could do better, what could we learn from this? But customers really liked the concept. You know, they really saw the value in it. One of the more interesting things that we did was working with the IoT sensor, the Internet of Things sensor in the bin, was trying to make sure that that stood alone. And it didn't actually need to be connected to either a power source or Wi-Fi. I don't know if anybody of you read the tech news, but there was an interesting case in Las Vegas actually where a casino has just been hacked through an IoT control in their fish tank. So it's like one of those smart fish tanks, you know, with flashy lights and it changes colour. But that fish tank was on the network, and basically once somebody hacked that fish tank, they were in on the network and they were looking at their financial details and customer records and so on. So to alleviate that kind of concern and risk to us as well, we really wanted something that could just sit by itself. And that increased the mobility of the service as well, because we could just wheel it into an office and walk away, and we didn't have to raise any changes and put through a network patching and firewalls and stuff like that to try and solve something that was meant to be a very simple problem. Thanks. So review the concept. This bin is now big, really big. Looks like this. That's actually in our office, but we have got them at Qantas. We've got them at about half a dozen sites now across Australia and New Zealand with customers. And a single bin will collect up to about a tonne of e-waste, just depending on where it is and the size of the office across a 12-month period, which there's only a 240 litre bin inside. So you can imagine the response that we've got from the bin to collect a tonne of e-waste from something that size. Interestingly, you know, when we post about introducing these on our customers, you know, social media, we put this on, actually I think it was Caltex, you know, their internal social media. You're great, we've got this new bin here. It was the most liked post they've ever had. Right, so more liked than people going, hey, we've got this new benefit, we're going to do this, you know, you can all go home on Friday at 4 p.m. It was the most liked post they've ever had. So people are really responding to that and they're seeing the need for the problem. So this is just a little dashboard of where we are. I won't big ourselves up too much, because what I really want to have time to talk to you about is what I think you should do, or what I think you can take from this experience. So if you're an organisation that has e-waste that you deal with, chuck some money at this problem, right? Allocate a budget. Don't rely on somebody to come and take it away from you for free. There's a fun little saying that when you get something for free, you are the product. Facebook has been a great recent example of that. So have a bit of a think. And write down your e-waste policy and do education about it. But of course, don't have a policy without being sure your people have the means to comply with the policy, right? Policy compliance doesn't happen in midair. And when you are picking your recycling partner, do your homework. They are not all like one another. You know, so go on site, ask the questions, look at the downstream handling, make sure it's been handled, not just with respect to the environment, but for human safety, and check the chain of custody as well. You really want to make sure the stuff is not going abroad where it doesn't have to be. So I think maybe I have time for one question, do I? No! Oi! Thank you. Yeah. Well, one of the things that's really interesting with these bins is, without fail, when we put them on site, someone will go, oh, great, right? I've got the cupboard full of stuff. I've got a literal meeting room full of stuff. So that happens. So that tonne is not necessarily just coming out of the bin, but we count it as a result of the bin if somebody makes that direct link, right? Which they do. They come up and they go, I saw the bin, can you help me with this? I mean, we had a really interesting example where I won't name the organisation, but they deal with the general public and in a position to collect a lot of lost property. And they said, oh, we've got a whole bunch of stuff, can we put it in the bin? And I was like, oh, we'll just send a separate courier to you and we'll pick it up. And they had about 20 plastic tubs like this of phones and Kindles and you know, stuff like going back to Nokia flip phones because they had just never ever known what to do with it, right? They knew that it shouldn't go in the bin, but no one had ever said, and they were just storing the stuff. No one had ever said, you know, maybe what should we do? So I think one of the big benefits of having these out and about, visible in the office, and that's what they're designed for. So if I go back to our R1, this is in our main lunchroom. This is in our main community space in our office. So there's thousands of people walking past that every day. We have a bin at Qantas, which is at their head office at Mascot, and there's probably about 3,000 people walking past that every day. It sparks the conversation. You know, and we chuck all our eWaste interesting facts and stuff on the side as well. So people are like, oh, you know, and they learn a little bit. So it's been a really interesting experience in trying to bring that education material to people as well. Thank you.